Okay, so the last thing we saw previously was discussing different than Rav Moshe Feinstein's position on the issue of relating to conservative and reform, which we saw before, something a little different in Rav Soloveitchik. Discussed that 2 weeks ago. We discussed how he sees it as where we do cooperate, where we don't cooperate, and he's sensitive to not, making total gaps that will be too large between different groups in Am Yisrael. And we, if he did have personal friends and things that he did consider people who he was close with, but still a large gap. And today, the last chapter, we're basing this on a booklet written by Rav Ronen Luvitz, and the last chapter and what he wrote was asking us, similar to it could be a bridge to our next topic, is what would Rav Kook have to say? Because Rav Kook wasn't dealing so much with reform and conservative. It existed in Western Europe. Rav Kook was in Lithuania, certainly wasn't strong in Lithuania and Eastern Europe. And then he moved to Eretz Yisrael before the establishment of the State of Israel. And it wasn't strong here. It wasn't the major issue. And I don't know that he even, it could be an interesting question, but I don't know that he explicitly said anything about it. But he did deal in great breadth with the question of the Zionist movement, of cooperation between religious and non-religious within the Zionist movement, and what that means and how it is similar to previous generations and different from previous generations. For me, it would be nice to delve into this. It's a big topic in Rav Kook. But what Rav Lubitsch is asking himself is this in any way relevant to our topic, to how should we relate to reform and conservative? Before we get into that, I'd like to mention another option that Rav Lubitsch doesn't even raise, and I can understand why. And some people here might have that attitude or want to raise that attitude or want to discuss that attitude, and that would be just be liberal, meaning, okay, so you believe in Orthodox halakha, someone else believes in conservative, someone else believes in reform. Just be liberal. Let everybody do their thing, and let's love one another and be together and live happily ever after. How about that? That's not Rav Kook, that's not Rav Soloveitchik, it's not Rav Moshe Feinstein. But how about that attitude? And certainly some people in the world today will take that. So I want to say, first of all, that I don't think it's an option as a religious Jewish position. Not to say if you have that option, you're not a Jewish religious person, you can disagree with me. But I don't think it's a coincidence that none of the rabbis that we know of took that position. None of the leading figures of rabbinics, even those who were more modern and open and etc., didn't take that opinion. Because I think if you take seriously a belief in halakha, in the way it's carried out, in the way it's decided, in tradition and commitment, I don't think you can just say, well, let's just let everybody do their thing. It's only a private, personal thing. I don't think it's only a private, personal thing. Myself, individually, I don't think it's only private and personal. I do think that it's my responsibility to try and do what I think is best and to try and influence in the way that I think is best. On the one hand, this is what I'm doing by saying I don't want to be an extremist who's fighting against reform and conservative in very negative ways and creating big what's the word? The tehomot.
Divides.
Yeah, but greater, thank you, but greater than divides, a tehom.
Fissures.
Sorry?
Fissures.
What's fissures?
Breaks.
Yeah, I don't know that word.
Fissures is breaks. It's like you have fissures after
I
an
would say the
earthquake.
word tehom, like
Chasm, like a chasm.
Sorry?
Depth.
The word chasm.
No.
Chasm?
No. That's a
chasm.
separate.
Chasm is a huge, hole or break, like a,
Depth.
like a
Depth.
Something you can't jump across.
Something you can't jump across, right? So I'm missing some terms I've never even heard in English, thank you. But in any case, so I will look, just like I will fight, I will struggle, I will try to influence in that direction that I think the negativity and the total negating, they're more dangerous, it's worse than being chiloni, these kind of expressions that we've discussed in the past, and I rejected. Just like I want to influence in that direction, I also want to influence in saying what's best and what's better. And there's a reason why I'm Orthodox. You could say I'm subjective because I did grow up in an Orthodox home, but still at the end, the person has an opinion. And I don't want to just be liberal and everybody have their thing. I want to respect someone who disagrees with me, and I want not to create tremendous, what do we call them? Schisms?
Chasm.
Divides.
Chasm.
Fissures, etc.
Crevices?
Crevices is too small. I think I got that right.
Yeah.
But in any case, we don't want to create tremendous gaps and tension
Divide.
in different groups.
Mhm.
But I do think we want to do what I'm not here just because I think it's the best for me. It's not a personal decision. Somebody likes vanilla, somebody likes chocolate. I like Orthodoxy. I think it's more of taking a stand on an issue. And so I don't want to say just let everybody do their thing. On the other hand, that doesn't mean, and this is again a difference between the way some Orthodox people look at it. It's not a sum zero game. Is that the way you say that in English?
Zero sum.
Zero sum game?
Yeah.
It's meaning it's not, Orthodoxy is 100% right, has all the answers. Conservative and Reform are zero, void of any value. They're just garbage. They're just, somebody's recording this is what they're going to quote. It's not, I don't think that because I believe that something is true, and I do think that tradition and upholding tradition and the limiting the authority of halakha, and there are some things we can decide, some things we can't, and checking into the validity of decisions that we can make and so on, and having a more gradual process about some modern things, and checking things out longer and not running head over heel after wherever modern world takes us without asking questions. Do we want to go that far, and so on? There are many reasons why I take the stand that I take, but it doesn't mean that I think that I am all right 100% and that others are 0% right. That will come up again later. But to just give let's be really liberal, everybody do their thing and love one another, I don't think that's good enough. And I don't think it's enough. I don't think it's even healthy as a people and as religious people to just say that because it's going to it doesn't create a framework where we can be together. Yes, and I've said before, it's valuable that people have a religious backbone, that they have a religious content, a religious identity, be it Reform or conservative. It's valuable. It's better that they have that than they have no Jewish identity, no religious identity. But that doesn't mean that I don't care what the identity is. And I think that just letting everybody be is kind of it's kind of an expression of not of respect of others, but of, I don't care so much about it. Would you run a state? I've had a Reform rabbi say this to me, and I don't agree with it. He compared it to you bring children to a place with beautiful flowers, and everybody can pick their flower, the flower that they like, meaning here's Judaism, let's present Judaism to all the children and let them choose the parts, everybody choose the part that they like. But I said to him, you wouldn't say that about the state. Let's present to all our people, all our citizens, the laws of the country, and everybody choose which laws you want to keep. Everybody will keep the laws that they want to keep, and if you don't like a law, you don't have to keep it, which means we're not going to have a state. And I think that to have a people with a religion, which I think is important, then we have to struggle, we have to fight for, not fight against, fight for something we believe in, while maintaining respect and togetherness and closeness with other people who disagree with us, but not just to be lax about it, everybody do their thing. So I'm going to stop here and ask if anyone wants to relate to this. Eliezer, go ahead.
That's not exactly the same thing. Years ago, 40 years ago or something like that, 50 years ago, I heard a lecture of Abisi Segai when he was young.
Sagi, I think, no? Sagai?
Sagi, man, Sagi.
Yeah, okay. From Bar Ilan.
Yeah, where he talked about the difference between, he had three things, but I only remember two of them. Pluralism and tolerance.
Mhm.
And where he said that pluralism is where you think that each person has justification in their beliefs. And tolerance is you think that you know the true thing, but you're willing to tolerate other people.
Meaning he's really a burden, but I'm willing to tolerate him.
That's right.
Okay.
And what you said sort of reminds me of that. I mean, you're putting another dimension into it, which might have been in this lecture too. And it was a while ago, but that you feel that there has to be some basic framework in which you work. But that sounds sort of like the tolerance aspect.
I think tolerance can be on two different levels, at least two. One is you're totally wrong. I don't like you at all. I don't like what you're saying, but you're my brother. And I'm gonna have to tolerate you because I want the family to stay together. So I don't value what you say, but I'm gonna tolerate you. Another attitude could be we can find common ground. We can discuss and argue about certain things, but I'm tolerating you not because I'm forced to, but because I understand that there is some value to what you're saying, even the certain parts I really disagree with, some parts I disagree with, but a little less. And I don't think that everything you're saying, like I said before, is zero, has no value. So I don't know if that's tolerance or it's a little bit like tolerance can be less. I presented it before as something very, very harsh. I really think you're horrible, but I'm going to have to tolerate you. It doesn't have to be that. Tolerance can also be, I know I don't know everything, and I'm not God, and I can listen to other people, even if their opinions are very different than mine, and tolerate them. Pluralism means, I think, let's try and define it. Pluralism means that I think that there's place for different opinions, and I do think that. I think there's place for different opinions, even those that I disagree with. It doesn't mean that I think they all have the same value or they all have the same closeness to the way that we should act, but it is different, and I think to create a framework, if I could, I would like to define the framework, or me with my closest friends, to define the framework within which Am Yisrael will function today.
Right.
But that's totally not realistic. So I'm willing to work together with people who disagree with me and find certain compromises and balances within which we will have a common framework. And beyond that, certainly there will still remain room for people on individual basis or in their own private homes and things like that to do things that are different than that framework, but it will maintain a certain level of framework, which to my mind is better than trying to coerce and force the framework that I believe in upon other people, because I don't believe in forcing and because it's not going to work and it's going to cause more damage. But so there's some combination of tolerance and pluralism in there. Tova.
Yes. I think that what you said was correct. We have to have a framework in which we can work together, but in other words, there are certain things that everybody must adhere to. Otherwise, we're not going to be a people. If we don't have certain things that define us, I don't care if a person is religious and goes to shul, but there are certain things that are connected or define who we are. And so we have a brit. We can't just say no brit milah. We have to have a decision about what to keep. If you don't want to keep certain things, fine. But there are certain rules that have to be obeyed from the Torah, that you can't disconnect yourself. You can't say they don't exist because otherwise we have nothing to hold on. What is going to hold us? What is what is going to be the glue that will glue us together?
I think we'll get to something about what you're saying soon, but I just want to say I agree with you, but when you try to do that with other people, they're going to have different, what are the main things that we have to keep and not be flexible about? They're going to have different ones, and then we're going to have to find a way together, some way together to put something together as a joint framework. You have to decide what are the most important things for you and what are the most important things for someone else. Try bridging and creating something that we can work with together. Not different from what Arav Meidan did with Professor Gabizon, but if we could do that on a national level, it would be nice. Mark.
I think, Michael has his hand up.
Mark says Michael.
Okay. I'm hearing it kind of several different things. It's very nice to have a space where you can interact with other people that disagree with you and be civil about it and not yell at each other and not think the other person is a complete jerk, or at least don't say it out loud. And get along at that level, but that's a very superficial level. To expect that to carry forward to a framework that the Jewish people will stick together may not be realistic at all. You have to have a set, Tova, I agree with you completely. You have to have a set of belief systems, laws, whatever you want to call it, rules that are required for the society to go forward. And the people that can't buy into that, they have to choose. Are they going to be part of the society and go forward with it even if they disagree? Or are they going to go off and form their own thing? And unfortunately, I think that's the way I see the reform movement. Certainly the humanistic Judaism movement, and then it gets crazier. Messianic Jews are the ultimate, I'm going to go do my own thing, but still call myself Jewish. I'm reminded of what I learned, very profound to me, when the first time I went to a conference on Jewish medical ethics. They used to have these big conferences called the International Conference on Jewish Medical Ethics in the States, but they had speakers from all over the world. Got to hear Lord Jakubowicz, who was the founder of Jewish medical ethics in the modern world. But the point was, in secular medical ethics, the highest value is autonomy. What does the patient want? In Jewish medical ethics, the highest value is, what does the Torah say is the right thing to do? And that is such a diametric opposite.
Right.
And I think in the Jewish world, we're faced with that same choice. And if you don't have an agreement that there is a set of rules that comes from a source above us, it's very difficult for the Jewish world to stick together.
First of all, I hear what you're saying, and food for thought for me, is it realistic? But on the other hand, I do believe that it's possible, but it's on a very high level that we're very far away from it. We have so much to work on the ground level, getting along together before we reach these high levels that I'm thinking of. I agree with that.
Yeah.
I still think it's possible, but before we get there, I'm not thinking of forming a Sanhedrin of sorts with different people, and we'll make some compromises, and we will keep our own halacha and our own poskim and things like that. But I do think that within the state of Israel, not necessarily all the Jews around the world, but within the state of Israel, I think there is a broad agreement on a middle ground that doesn't include the extremes, on a level of Judaism that we can compromise on, a level of Jewish life that we can compromise on, and it can be a Knesset vote if we would look to do it that way. My problem is with people and politicians and people who support those politicians. And I have to admit, honestly, I am the minority. How do I know I'm the minority? Because the facts are that if people are voting for these parties that don't want to work this way. So apparently I'm the minority, but I do think that if we wanted to, and I'll try to work on this and convince people of it, we could even reach an agreement of the Israeli society on, not on 100% compromise, but on some things, a lot of things that we could agree on together. And I think that the Israeli society at large is much more interested in its Jewish identity than the extreme that says anything you bring to an Israeli school about tradition and religion is what they call in Hebrew hadata, meaning it's coercion to religion. Not only you're not allowed to force religion, you're not allowed to teach religion because that means you're doing a tshuva movement, and you can't put a tefillin stand outside of the school because you're luring these miserable souls to do something. Those are extremists. I don't think that they represent the majority of Israeli society. And I do think a lot of that is a reaction to coercion, to being forceful, to trying to say my way or no way. And then this is a reaction to it. So I think there is a middle ground between what I'm dreaming of and what you're saying is not realistic. I think there's, before I reach an agreement that the state of Israel is going to function by, I think there's a lot that can be done moving in that direction by a large part of the Israeli society. And there are social movements in Israel today that are working in that direction. Will they gain enough strength socially and then politically to ever be able to do anything with that? That's a good question. One of these groups wants to meet with the group of rabbis that Osher and I are part of Beit Hillel, the male and female Orthodox rabbis. And we have a meeting this Motzei Shabbat to hear a Zoom meeting, to hear their take on this. And they asked to meet with us. So, they're trying to do something. So good for them. If different groups like this could come together, that would be great.
You just put an idea in my head, and maybe you know the answer to this. When you take groups that are extremely liberal, maybe even completely secular, the ones that, are opposing teaching Judaism, allowing people to put on tefillin in public, et cetera, have you ever talked with them and asked them what do they truly believe? What is morality to them? And then point out that everything they believe comes from Judaism. Does that make any difference?
I've done a little bit of that, and I'm sorry to say and sad to say that I don't have enough either time or management skills in my life to, time management skills in my life to find time to do that at length. But if I did, I wouldn't, even though I agree with you, I wouldn't try to put it forth in that way. I would try to find common ground with them, meaning not just
But
to tell them
that is common ground.
I agree, but I think it's too strong towards them saying, you're right, but it's all in Judaism. That would come up in my discussion with them, but I think I would try to build something that's more joint and help it grow gradually. But you're right, it'll take me about 7,000 years to get it done, so it's not going to happen.
Start sometime.
But I've started.
Okay, get some good drugs too.
Mark.
This is not a formed thought at all, so bear with me. I'd like to reverse the question. We're in the following sense. We're talking about, the perspective from Orthodoxy and how does Orthodoxy relate to the other denominations. I'd like to flip that around and ask the question, okay, let's suppose I'm a Reformed person and I'm asking the question, well, how do I relate to Orthodoxy? And the reason why I ask this, and the reason why I think it's a little bit relevant, is because Reform movement has been around for a long time. But there is a demographic, as far as I understand, in Reform society, where, after a generation or two, most people who are Reformed Jews will disappear from Judaism. Do they see that? So although the Reform movement itself is long-lived, people's staying power in the Reform movement is not very long-lived. And therefore, is there an issue with how they see the future of Judaism developing, and how does that relate to the Orthodox tradition, which is much longer ago?
I'm sorry, I'm not the right person to ask this question. I do have an acquaintance, I can't say a close friend, but a friend. I haven't spoken to her in a few years. That's how friendly we are, but not because anything came between us, just everybody's busy with their own life. But I could raise this with her theoretically, or even bring her in and have other people discuss with her and ask her these questions. What I do know is that she cares very much, and this is her take after sitting down and having a serious discussion with her once a few years ago. Her take on it is her mission is to take Israelis who have a zero Jewish identity and to bring them closer to a Reform community. Does she think that this is the savior of Judaism and this is going to continue for all generations? I don't know, but for her life mission, she's passionate about this mission, and she wants to give people more of a Jewish identity than they have now.
So then we would have to ask if the Orthodox movement, is that a worthwhile endeavor?
Absolutely.
Orthodox.
Right. I agree. And that question I can answer as one Orthodox person. And I would say, I think it's valuable. I appreciate her. I understand that she's passionate about something here, and she wants Jewish identity, and she wants other people who are far or estranged to Judaism to have a Jewish identity. I would think that she's making things move in a positive direction. I don't think it's worse that they're Reformed than that they have no Jewish identity. I think it's better that they're Reformed, but that would not change my attempt, my effort to bring people closer to a more intense connection with Torah and halakha and keeping mitzvot and so on, if I could. What would happen if I approached her synagogue, her community, and was so powerful and so I don't know, charismatic or whatever, so convincing, like Michael said before, I would tell them and show them and so on, and I would turn them all Balei Tshuva, Orthodox. First of all, my friendship with her would probably come to an end, and she wouldn't have me come another time. But from my own perspective, I would think it's a good thing. Look, and I would say, look what you brought them closer, so much that I could then keep on pulling them in a better direction. But even if that doesn't happen, I think it's good that they have a Jewish identity.
Okay, can I speak?
Yes.
I think we have.
Let's move on, please. Yes.
Okay, I think we have to start with the Department of Education in Israel. That's what I think. That's where we start.
Yes.
We have to start with education and the non-religious schools. Everybody should get some taste of Judaism. They should know something. And I think that's very important, because the more they know about Judaism, the better they will feel about it, about the religion. They'll be knowledgeable, and I think it'll make a big difference.
I think, Tova, that just one thing before what you're saying, I think we have to start with the religious people. First of all, I agree. Rabinovich from Ma'ale Adumim, I've quoted him often on this. He said this about struggles against reform. He said it's a yetzer hara, and that what we have to do is teach more Torah, and we have to do a better job of teaching Torah than them, and we have to be aware of what Torah works with people. What you can't just thrust it on them. You have to see what works, what attracts people, what doesn't, and so on. Why do I say that we have to start with the religious people, not with the non-religious people? Because there are so many religious people who are not ready to ask questions, to be aware, to understand the non-religious people. Why are they against having Judaism in the schools and so on? I don't think it's just enough to come and say, I'm coming to teach Judaism in your school.
Yeah.
It's not going to work. They're going to throw me out. But I'm not enough of personal experiences, but they're going to throw me out. But if we do it in a good way, if we create a positive process, and if we make it mutual. Years ago, there was a plan in the Ministry of Education, which was a plan of more Judaism and more democracy. Why was it valuable? Because they felt, okay, it's us and them, right? So they felt that we need to learn more democracy and liberalism.
Okay.
And we think, of course, I don't mean all these they and we, but just for the
Right.
purpose of the argument. And we think that they need more Judaism. So the Ministry of Education said, let's make a deal. Let's bring more democracy and liberalism into the religious schools and more Judaism and Jewish tradition and Tanakh and so on into the general education in Israel. I think that was a good idea. Why did it fall through? Why doesn't it happen today? Because all kinds of reasons. People have gone to more extremes on both sides. So, but I do, it's
they
not
used
enough.
to-
It's
they
not
used
enough
to-
to say that we want to teach people who are not religious. We have to think, what are we doing that's pushing them away? How can not only us, other people are doing also. It's not only our fault, but what can we do also that can be more attractive, that can be more significant? How can we work together to do things and not so they don't feel that I'm coming as a rabbi to make them Baalei Tshuva, and then they're afraid of that. What are the things that we can do here? So there are a lot of questions here. I'm gonna move on, okay? Okay, I want to get to Rav Kook today. This is the last chapter, and it's going to take us more than once. Rav Kook, Rav Lubitch brings Rav Kook. As I said, he had a lot in very extensive writing about why he decided to cooperate. Many rabbis didn't cooperate with the non-religious Zionist movement, Herzl's Zionist movement. But there were religious Zionists in the congresses, in the movement, and Rav Kook became a leader in that sense, and came to Israel, made Aliyah, and worked with the Moshavim and with the new settlements in the not yet born, preparing to become a Jewish state, and so on. And he deals a lot with this question. And so Rav Lubitz asks himself, what can we take from that to where we are today? Some things we can't take, because part of what Rav Kook said is when you see Jews coming to the land of Israel, to settle the land of Israel, to bring, to revitalize the people of Israel, Am Yisrael, after thousands of years of Galut, returning to Eretz Yisrael, to create a Jewish state, people are willing to sacrifice their lives, like they're willing today, to fight for the survival of Am Yisrael, of Medinat Yisrael, to settle the land, to dry out the swamps and all these things. And they had this tremendous Mesirut Nefesh. Good term for that in English would be?
Messianic.
dedicated
But it's
sacrifice.
not only zeal, it's they're willing to sacrifice their lives for it to that extent.
Dedication.
So, dedication, not as good as Mesirut Nefesh, sorry. Mesirut Nefesh is powerful. Sorry?
I think zeal is.
Zeal. No, Mesirut Nefesh is stronger than all those because you're willing to die for it.
Sacrifice their lives. They're willing to sacrifice their lives.
Yeah. So you got the idea. So that aspect of what Rav Kook saw is not what we would take to hear for our discussion now. And it's been mentioned here this evening earlier when we discussed what we would do after this. How much, I think, Michael, you said this, how much of Rav Kook is it relevant today, because the reality of the non-religious is different than it was in his time. And, I would make a claim about that, but we'll get to that. But let's look at some points that Rav Kook makes about these things. One of the things that Rav Kook says is don't look only on the superficial level of attitudes and the ways people treat different things. Like, for instance, let's take an example. Look at Zionism. It was a very big change. And part of what the Zionists and the settlers in Israel wanted was to bring about a new Jew, what they saw as a new Jew, who would be productive, who wouldn't be a little peddler, and he wouldn't be busy all the time with all these laws of the Torah. He would be a modern person. He would be a strong person physically. He would be a free person, and he would create a state with the most modern things and with the with plants and science and things like that. The religious community was very afraid of this because it's all new, it's different. It takes our energies from putting all our energies into God worshiping to being very human and humanistic and active and productive and practical, and you're not leaving energies for Judaism, and it created a very strong rift where you have to choose either or. But part of what Rav Kook said is that they're all right. Everything they're saying is right, except for the fact that it can't work with Judaism. Close to what you were saying before, Michael. They were saying, yes, you can be a religious Jew and settle the land. You can be a religious Jew and be a scientist. You can be a religious Jew and take upon yourself all kinds of agree with modern values and create a state and everything that a state demands and everything that they were saying, the chalutzim, the settlers, who were, most of them were not religious or anti-religious, running away from Judaism in the 19th century after liberalism or enlightenment and I don't know if liberalism is the right word, but enlightenment and freedom and equality in the world, just like the Reform were trying to be part of the large world yet remain within some kind of Jewish framework. So they wanted to be modern and stay within a Jewish framework in the way of a nation rather than as a religion. And Rav Kook sees all the positivity of this. They want to bring Am Yisrael back to be a thriving nation, a strong nation, a modern nation, to come together in Eretz Yisrael and create a state. All this is positive. It's only a social thing. Maybe it's not only a social thing. It's very much a social thing that these are two groups. So you have to choose. You're going to be either this or that. And maybe it's not only a social thing because maybe there is tension. Where do I put my energies? Am I going to learn a lot of Torah? And then I don't have time to be such a productive and be a scientist and all these other values? Or am I going to do all these other things and I won't have time and energy and to teach Torah and to make Torah move on, pass on from generation to generation? So there is a tension there, but it's not a contradiction. So this is part of the reason. And Rav Kook said, I heard a calling. It's like he heard a voice in the wind. Okay, he wasn't hallucinating. He means, this was my calling. I heard a calling. Like I heard God calling me and saying to me, you have to come to Eretz Yisrael and bridge these two sides and bring the energies from side to side. And he discusses how even Kabbalically, according to Kabbalah, there are different kinds of energies to an individual and to a nation. And there are pipes, he calls it, sinorot. There are kind of pipes through which there are energies that are being transferred from right to left and from left to right. And Rav Kook sees himself as those pipes. I will be connected to these modern things, and I will be connected to the religious society, and I will help these get the blessing. Each one has an advantage and has a blessing, has a talent that the other one doesn't have, and let's have some mutual influence on one another. And you don't have to change. You don't have to become like the other one, but understand that the other one has something to give you and you have something to give the other one. And that way we can be greater together. So if I take these kinds of concepts and I bring them to our issue, is this relevant to let me present one more before I ask the question. There's an idea in Judaism, which is sanigoria, limud zchut. How do I say this in a sanigor in the court is called a defense attorney, but it's not only the attorney, it's saying positive. Let's say a person committed a crime, but you come to give a testimony to his good character, meaning he's not a tough criminal who's been doing this for all his life and you should put him away forever. Maybe this person needs to be punished, but you can be lighter on the punishment because he's really a good person and so on. So Rav Kook is taking this trait of teaching positive about a person, saying positive, looking with a good eye, with an ayin tova on a person. So he doesn't keep Shabbat and doesn't keep kashrut and not tarat hamishpacha and not brachot and not shul and not tefillin and not this and not that, but he wants to be Jewish. So I want to show you what his Jewish connection is, and I want to look at him with a good eye, with a positive eye. And Rav Kook says it's not just emotional. It's not just that I want to be nice to this person and I want to I want to see some positive sides of him, even though I disagree with him on a lot of other things. He says it's very important because it enables us to see the processes that are happening within Am Yisrael and make them move forward. And these are positive processes with negative prices that we're paying because of them. Because there's a change that needs to happen in Am Yisrael. We've been in Galut too long. We've become a spiritual nation that exists without a body. And as an individual person, to have spirit without a body, in this world, that is called death. So for Am Yisrael to continue to be a spiritual entity, living spread out in the world with learning Torah and keeping mitzvot, and not having a physical existence of a state of our own is very weak. It's not strength, it's weakness. To create a Jewish state where we will have strong Judaism, that's a strong person, just like an individual, says Arav Kook, should be a strong physical person, healthy and strong, and be a strong spiritual person. So too, Am Yisrael take from the non-religious modern settlers the part of making Am Yisrael strong as a nation, physically, realistically, take from the traditional religious group the spiritual strength and try and put them together. Can we take from these attitudes, and Arav Kook didn't deal, as we said in the opening, with reform or conservative, but can we take these concepts and apply them, not copy-paste, because it's a different reality, but can we take from these concepts and try to apply them here? Can we look at a person who's reform or conservative and say, well, they want a rejuvenation of Judaism. They want a renewal. They want some modern values to be expressed in Judaism. And to say not, they are totally wrong, let's be totally against them because they're going to make Judaism fall apart. Can we say instead of that, I agree with what they want, I disagree with their boundaries? Can we create a common ground here? Can we say what they mean to do is positive? They're overdoing it. They're not balancing it. Can I say I heard a calling? God called me to say that we should take something from the non-Orthodox movements because Orthodoxy has become too set in its ways and set in cement, and it's not supposed to be that way. There is supposed to be renewal and growth in Judaism, but they have taken it way too far. But let's see that the generation needs renewal. It needs connection of modernity and Judaism. And let's take this from them. And if we pick up that value, and if we decide to create that renewal in Judaism instead of leaving it to them, then maybe we'll do a better job of it, and we won't need people to go to the extremes of reform in order to feel connected to the modern world. How can we do this within Orthodoxy on a different level? And then maybe we will be learning something from the processes happening around us that we disagree with, but not just rejecting them and negating them, but seeing where is it coming from? What is the need of people? Why is this happening? And then be able to do it maybe in a better way of bringing together values that seem to be clashing all the time, but maybe they don't inevitably need to clash. Maybe we can make them function together on a certain level. So that's one way of taking one perspective of Arav Kook's attitude and trying to implement it here on this issue in a way which is different than everything that we've discussed until now.
How would you do that?
Okay, how can we do that? I'll give you one example. For instance, you can change the place of women in shul without saying that we reject everything that existed in the halakha in the past. And someone reform will criticize us and say, that's sweet, but it's not good enough because you're not creating total equality. And I hear their criticism, but I don't have to decide. Either I go all the way to where they are, or I stay exactly where my great-grandparents were. Maybe there's something that can be done that's middle ground, that gives that value place in their lives. And for some people, it's not going to be enough. It's never going to be enough. But for some people, it's moving in the right direction in a way that is balanced with their tradition and is positive for them. And maybe they won't need to go to something reform in order to find this. Maybe some non-religious people will come to a place like this. I happen to be hinting to a specific shul in one town in Israel. Maybe some non-religious people can come visit this and see it. And maybe they won't say, this is what I want, but they will say, but it shows me something more positive about Judaism than some other Orthodox people that I know. So I think there are many ways to try and think about doing things like that. That was just one example.
There's an inherent difficulty in human nature in the following sense. When you try to find common ground with somebody, which is a very positive thing to do, you find common ground and then you say, okay, we agree. And then you rapidly go to what you don't agree on. And then you spend much more time discussing what you don't agree on than what you do agree on. But the way around that, I think, is to start with what we agree on the common ground, and then explore what the differences are, and try to understand, okay, there are differences, we have different opinions, different way of approaching things, what have you, but to try to use those differences to really go deeper and find out that those differences aren't necessarily so different after all.
If I say it in a different way, tell me if we're saying maybe the same idea or close ideas or not. I think we can, for instance, taking the example that I used, we agree that the way the world was, or a lot of the world was in the past, in terms of women's status and equality and so on, we agree that needs to be changed in our time, and we disagree on how much, and so on. And so we even by saying that, or let me take another example, or talk about freedom. I can agree that every person is free to make their decisions, and I don't want to force religion upon other people or a religious attitude upon other people. But I will argue with someone else about some aspects of freedom that have been hinted to here earlier, in all kinds of behaviors that they've gone too far. But we can agree that freedom is a value. Can we agree with some people? We can agree that believing in a higher force and commitment to something that is higher than us, some people who are not Orthodox, but we can agree on that. We'll disagree on what it means and exactly what it demands from us. But can we stress that we agree on these two concepts, and at the same time we have many disagreements on the exact balance and details of how this is implemented?
So then the
What
idea
do you
is,
gain from that?
well,
One second, I'll answer that.
the idea is to disagree, because that's the dialectic, right? That's how you
Right.
make progress. The idea is to disagree, actually, but to disagree at a level where you can explore the nature of the disagreement and discover what parts of those disagreements are actually agreement, are actually common.
Yeah. Ilana, what's the point of it? The point of it is to even without achieving my 7,000 year goal of creating a joint even legal framework for the state of Israel, but it's a common ground. It's saying we both care about things. We both care about Judaism, and we both care about equality between people, and we care about continuing our tradition. And there are places where these two are going to clash. And we agree that we want both of them. We disagree in certain places where they clash, which way we go. And we're creating something common to us. We can even join forces and struggle against someone who wants not to have any Judaism in the country, or against someone who wants to say, don't change anything from what was in the past. It has to look exactly the way it did 5 generations ago or 500 generations ago. So we're creating something here which is together. It creates a mutual respect. It creates a closeness and a basis on which we are going to disagree. But even when we're disagreeing, we're not, head-on collision. We disagree on certain places, but it's not a head-on collision. All these things I think are valuable.
I'm just gonna drop this to make you crazy. But when Bnei Israel left Egypt and moved on to the Holy Land, so to speak, and obviously people prayed, and I'll just bet you, Rav Tzvi, there were no mechitzas. I'll just leave that there for you.
No, Ilana, I knew what I was saying. I wasn't saying it only to you.
And that's a long time ago. So
Want me to
somehow
answer you?
mechitzot have been added in and
I
institutionalized.
agree, 2,000
For
years
no
ago. they
good
were added in,
reason.
but They've been there for 2,000 years, so
2,000
right now they're
years.
there. But let's not, again, I knew what I was saying, Ilana. I knew I was talking to everybody, but also to you, yes. But we do have a common ground, you and I. Okay? And I think that changes our relationship and our disagreements because we are not just 180 degrees opposing one another. And so we can only talk about where we disagree, or we can say what is our common ground and where do we disagree. And it's a very different relationship. Eliezer.
I just need to, I'm gonna need to leave now, but thank you for having me and I hope to participate in the future.
Oh, please.
Happy to see you.
Good to
Please
see you,
do.
Karen.
Eliezer.
So, first of all, when we first came to Israel, we met a senior member of a secular kibbutz whose claim to fame was that he grew tulips.
I thank him for that. They're very beautiful.
It was amazing how he did it also, but it's not subject for a different talk, different discussion. But while he was talking to us, the friend of his came by and just started joking to each other. And they were not, in a serious way, they were quoting scriptures in the discussion. And so these people knew the Bible inside out, even though they were secular. And we've sort of lost that. But I think it's important that people know about Jewish tradition and that and I'm a very strong disciple of the competition of ideas, and that our ideas about Judaism should be strong enough that they can win in a competition. But the main point I wanted to get to is that people, when they discuss things, they lose their goal of what they're aiming for. Like people talk about unity a lot today, but they don't respect the other person to understand about unity.
Okay.
And what you were saying about Ayin Tovah, that's probably the most important thing. I mean, from the Mishnah, it's probably the most important thing in your relationship to other people. When you discuss with people, you should find out their strong points and discuss with them according to their strong points. And the final thing that I wanted to say was that if we want to bring people closer to Judaism and religion and Kadosh Baruch Hu, that should be our goal, and not the goal to convince people of one political aspect or another. In other words, if you're really religious, then you're going to think such and such. That's exactly what drives people away from religion.
The first point and the last point that you made go together. We have certainly lost that description of people being very knowledgeable about Jewish tradition, whether it's Tanakh or Torah Sheba'al Peh. and therefore being able to argue on that basis are people who very much care about Jewish sources, Jewish wisdom, and but they're not religious. We've definitely lost most of that, not 100% of it, but most of it.
Right.
Part of what we need to do to bring that back is what we were discussing before, it's not enough just to say, I'm going to teach or to put a program in the Ministry of Education that all non-religious schools have to study. That's not, it has to be a change in the attitude in society and so on. And that connects with the third point that you said about how, what does it mean? But at the same time, and here, Eliezer, you and I even don't totally agree. I think I totally agree with you that you can't say, if you're religious, you have to have this political attitude. And I see it about the Hiskem Chatufim now, whatever you call it, with the Hamas. What is it called in English? The Iska.
Ceasefire?
The ceasefire, but the deal.
Deal,
The deal.
the deal.
Because I've heard religious people saying both sides. I've heard religious people saying, how can you be religious and say that you're not in favor of this deal? And I've heard religious people saying, how can you be religious and say that you're against this deal?
Right.
So I've heard both opinions. Now, I'm not sure if you agree with me on this or not. I think it's fine if you think that religiously this is the right thing. But you have to listen to someone else who claims the opposite. What is his reasoning? And you can't say there's only one right way about it.
Absolutely.
So, and usually, to be honest, I think that that both claims, both the reasoning on each side is relevant. So yes, I agree. But on the other hand, I don't think it's a good thing to say religion should not bring me to an opinion on political issues. I think that the question of settling Yehuda v'Shomron is not just a political question. It's a totally religious, moral, halachic, historical, much greater question than real politics, today's real politics. Even, and I know you'll disagree with this one, even settling Gaza, I think, is a religious and moral question, not just a political stand.
Right.
And so it's okay that we can disagree on it, but I think religion, it's too extreme to say you shouldn't have I don't know that you were saying this, that religion shouldn't bring you to a political position. It shouldn't bring you to say, everyone religious should think this, like everyone religious should keep Shabbat. Yes, I think that. I can't say everyone religious should agree that you have to be right-wing or left-wing. I think it's more complex than that. Usually most things in life are more complex than that.
Yeah.
Can I throw in a quick comment?
Yes.
Going back to something that Eliezer said a few minutes ago that was actually, I've been thinking about that, is you can't have a successful, whether this is a negotiation or learning with other people that disagree with you, etc., if you don't really know where you're going. You have to have some concept of what endpoint are we trying to reach, or you're never going to get there anyway. So it has to be a reasonable endpoint. And it may be that we should do it in stages. And stage one, I would think, should be just the concept of shalom bayis, that you're going to have discussions with people that disagree with you, that you disagree with them, but you need to, as you've said over and over today, you have to respect the other's opinion to the point that you can still have a cup of coffee with them afterwards without throwing it in each other's face. You have to have, a sense of fellowship. How do you get there? I'm not sure that you get there just by dealing with adults. I think that needs to be inculcated in generations, starting with young children. How do you behave with your friends on the playground? This is not so different. The idea that we're all going to get to a point where we all agree on something, no, we're not going to get there.
It might happen, Michael. It might happen.
All right, Mark, if you're Mashiach, just come out and say so. Stop hiding your light under a bushel.
I have to. Sorry.
The point is that the Bible doesn't, it's ambiguous in many ways. And in
That's
fact,
why I just don't, I don't think we can broaden the discussion on that, but that's why I would make a difference between things that are explicit in the Torah and things that are not. You can't say that the Torah says we don't have to keep Shabbat. You can say I don't keep Shabbat. You can't say the Torah says you don't have to keep Shabbat. It's explicit.
Yeah.
There's some things that are
Yes.
explicit. How do you relate to modern challenges of this? How do you relate to people and so on? So I agree. There are more things that the Torah and the Nach are ambiguous about it. There are more things that they're ambiguous about it than things that they're clear about, because the world is usually not our Beit Midrash. It's a reality. In the Beit Midrash, things are clear, but in the reality, things are a lot less clear. But at the same time, you can form an opinion. But I would say, Michael, relating to what you said, going back to what I said before, having a common ground and clarifying what we agree on, and not only what we disagree on, creates a relationship, a positive relationship, and not only a relationship of disagreeing. And then we can play on the playground together. Not only the children need to play on the playground, we have to play on our grown-up playground together. It doesn't have to mean play ball, we have to, play coffee. But we have to, it has to be pleasant. And we have to bring some pleasantness into that. And that's part of, yes, that's part of what tears us apart as a society, Shlom Bayit before other things. We don't know one another, we never spend time together, we never do anything together. All we do is meet one another when we're ready to bang heads against one another. When are we going to play a little bit together and have some fun together? So that's important, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to say this for the future. So just like we took a concept of Rav Kook today and asked how can we implement this, it's not identical copy-paste to the settlers in the beginning of the 20th century, but yet how can we take the concept and try and implement that in our relationships with other denominations? That is going to be the issue that we're going to try and continue to discuss in 2 or 3 more points from Rav Kook's teachings and attitudes. That's what we plan to do next time.
Thank you.
Bezrat Hashem,
Bye-bye.
Bezrat
Good night.
Hashem, the next session in 2 weeks, we will be in Renana to experience that.
Great. Yofi.
Yay.
Bruchim habayim.
Toda rabah.
Yay.
Okay.
Safe travels.
Thank you.
Good. Goody, goody.